Okay, great. So we are beginning the recording, and let me swap my presenter view so that you all can see. Okay, so we are right on the nose today at 12:30, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here today. We greatly appreciate it. This webinar is being recorded today. And I am Hallie Crawford. I am a certified career coach, speaker, and author based in Atlanta, Georgia. And I have over 19 years of experience coaching, training, and conducting workshops and webinars like this. And it's actually kind of cold here in Atlanta today. I know that a lot of you are joining us from lots of different remote or different locations where I'm sure it's going to be a lot colder. So I won't complain very long there, but that's what's going on here. So we really appreciate you being here today for this webinar because we completely understand how difficult times are for a lot of us. I think for us here in Atlanta, we've just been really lucky having such nice weather for so long that helps us get a little bit less stir crazy. But we are trying to provide as much of this content and information to people as possible to help you through what we know for so much of us or so many of us is a really difficult time. So thank you for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. So what we are going to be talking about today is how to deal with difficult coworkers or employees and focus on how to do this when we're working remotely, which we know so many of you are and why you're here today. So as we discuss each of these coaching skills and topics that I share with you, these are the same ones that we share with all of our clients, but I'm going to tailor each of the tips and advice as we progress here today for working remotely, just kind of FYI as we go. And just as a quick reminder for those of you who are just joining us, this webinar will be recorded today. You will receive a copy of that afterwards. So let's take a look at this first slide here and why it's so important to be able to handle conflict and dealing with difficult coworkers or employees effectively. If you look at this first slide with these statistics, studies show that, in fact, unfortunately, a lot of difficulties in organizations actually stem from strained relationships between employees, not from deficits in an employee's skill set or experience or expertise, if you will. And a typical manager can spend between 25 to 40% of their time dealing with workplace conflicts, which is a lot. That can be 1 or 2 days of every work week. And as we all know, just personally, how this kind of workplace or difficulty, how much stress it causes us as well, that's enough in and of itself of an important reason to discuss this. So the advice that I'm going to give you today is advice that we have used with our clients over the past 19 years to help them more effectively work with anyone in their workplace, but more specifically dealing with those difficult coworkers or employees. And as I said just a moment ago, I wanted to let you all know that during this difficult time of the pandemic, we are trying to provide a lot of new, fresh, relevant content to help people out as much as possible. So I did want to point out on this slide here today, before we keep moving, that please check out our career blog up here at the top right on our website, because we are publishing a lot every single week to help you with specific issues about working remotely, being unemployed, etc. As well as if you are not connected with me on LinkedIn yet, please do connect with me, because we're also pumping out a lot of information there as well to help people as much as possible, because we totally get that this is a very difficult time for a lot of people. So just wanted to mention that briefly. So the second reason why it's so important to learn how to deal with workplace conflicts or difficulties is because work environment is a make or break for our career and our career satisfaction. So if you take a look at our ideal career model, this is the model that we use with all of our clients to help them identify and write up their strategic career plan, to understand and identify what the right career path and fit is for them as well. And if you see here on the left, work environment is one of the main pieces. It's something that is a critical component to our fulfillment and to being in the right long-term career fit. So work environment impacts so much, else in terms of our satisfaction at work, because it's not just about, yes, we all need to be leveraging our strengths and skills and our experience and feel that sense of fulfillment. But if our work environment is toxic in any way, shape, or form or difficult, the rest of our career is not going to go well. Okay. So this is another reason why it's so important. And if any of you would like to get a copy of this career model, we'd be happy to share it with you. Feel free to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. That's admin@halliecrawford.com. Just shoot us a quick email. We will share that with you afterwards, in addition to the recording, as we said. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk quickly about how coaching is defined, because what we have found with our clients is that when we begin to train them on some of the coaching skills that we use with them, they start to expand their repertoire or toolkit, if you will, of how to deal with difficult situations, whether it's in person or remote. We're going to then talk about 3 critical coaching skills, or communication skills, I should say, that will help you deal with these coworkers or employees remotely. And then we're going to give you some resources as well along the way. There is a handout that we will provide to you, because we do want you to walk away with this or from this webinar today with tangible action items that you will take. The handout will be provided along with the recording at the end as well. So just really quickly, coaching defined is, in its truest or purest sense or form, it's really about helping someone learn something in order to improve their performance. It's not about telling them what to do. It's about showing them something, giving feedback, explaining something in a broader sense, or encouraging them. It's not always just giving advice. And these coaching skills to improve communication in the workplace, and I'll pull all of these up right now. The reason why we're talking about this today is because one of the ways that you need to, or things that you need to start working on in order to deal with difficult coworkers or employees, is to develop that greater sense of trust or empathy, improving your tone in your conversations with them, even when it's an email or on video chat. Having a more direct, honest, and open relationship where you can talk about touchy things a little bit more easily and safely, and establishing that connection with them as well. So the idea here is that a lot of times, not every single time, but a lot of times difficulties with employees or coworkers can stem from one of these things not being present or in place, a lack of trust, a lack of empathy, whatever it is. So these skills are going to help you kind of build out that foundation a little bit more in order to deal with these difficulties. Okay, so that's what we're going for here today. So some of the foundational skills for coaching, we would encourage you to write these on the handout afterwards or on your piece of paper right now, just so you can take a few notes here, is we're going to talk today mostly about designing the relationship with them, listening and active listening skills, and curiosity. We'll touch briefly on intuition and self-management as well, okay? But all of these tools will help you diffuse any difficult situations that you may be having with any of your coworkers, including remotely, like we said. So let's start with this next slide here and designing the relationship. So especially now that we have all been working remotely for at least, like 5 or 6 weeks or more than that, I can't even count anymore. I can't remember when all of this started because it feels like so long. Designing the relationship is our first skill. And even if it's been a long time for you working remotely, we still want you to consider designing your relationship or redesigning it now at this point. One of the really important and a very critical kind of foundational skill, if you will, is to not just, flow into the work relationships that you have, including when they're remotely, but have a quick conversation about the structure of your relationship and how it can be more effectively given that we're working remotely now. Talk with them about guidelines for communication. How are you both going to handle tasks effectively? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer phone or video chat? When are we going to have our meetings? Should we have more frequent meetings? And we would, by the way, recommend that so that you can stay in touch with people a little bit more. What kind of boundaries do you need to set, or do they need to set, that you guys should actually talk about? Because, for example, they've got to feed their kids at night, or they need to help their kids with schoolwork during the day. So instead of just making assumptions about what works or doesn't work for people, talk with them about it and invite them to share their opinion and what their needs are first, so that you can establish that trust and then share what your needs are kind of second. But also, as part of this agreement, make an agreement and have a quick conversation about, hey, I feel like, things might be a little bit touchy for us right now, especially given everything's remote. And I totally understand that, this is an uncomfortable time for all of us. Could we chat for a few minutes about how to work through some of these issues and talk about how you can handle conflict, how you can handle disagreement and feedback? Do they prefer, for example, to get feedback first via email and then have a live phone conversation about it? Because, for example, maybe they're a little bit more introverted and they can digest it more that way or more easily, and then they can be more prepared to talk about it afterwards. So design your relationships effectively. Don't just assume that everything is the same just because, we're all working remotely. Talk about what needs to change and adjust and invite them to share first. These are some things here that you can work through, and we would suggest including in your agreement with them. What are our objectives and tasks? And oh, by the way, they changed since the coronavirus crisis? What are the roles that you each play in the projects that you're working on currently based on your strengths? And are you in the right fit? Are you each working on the things that you should be working on? Or do you need to adjust or shift things based on your strengths, especially now that you're working remotely? What are the challenges that your organization has encountered in the past and may encounter in the future that we need to be prepared for, and how can we deal with those? What are the milestones we need to be understanding or agreed upon between the two of us or within the team so that we know we're being effective and we're achieving what we need to? So agree on those milestones. Ground rules, again, for when you're going to be out of pocket versus when you can be available, and also for meetings and communication. And one of the things that we're telling our clients is that we want you to kind of over-communicate or err on the side of over-communicating when we're working remotely and providing more context to why you're asking for something specific or, why you're bringing something up. Because what happens when we're working remotely is we don't have that face-to-face opportunity to stop by Joe's office and chat with him for a minute. Or he doesn't have the opportunity to have chatted with Sarah, someone else in your office, to understand the context. Because now we're not all in the same space where we have this natural, like break room kind of chat or chit chat, if you will. So provide more context and err on the side of over communicating versus under communicating. One of the other things that we would suggest doing is, I'm sure all of us to a certain extent are starting to get sick of the Zoom video conferencing and, everything else that we're doing. But one of the kind of silver linings that we're finding is that people are like noticing what's going on in the background, or a picture that someone has on the wall, or a shirt that they're wearing. And we're noticing more of those things about people. And as a result, we get to have more talking points and get to know them a little bit more on a personal level, because we're bringing more of our personal lives into these things. Their pet might come in and interrupt them. So this is the beauty of the remote workplace, if you will, is in some cases, this is an opportunity to get to know people a little bit more, especially as well because we're all in this together and we're all in kind of the same boat, and we have this shared kind of, angst, frustration, whatever is going on. So take some time in the next week to design the relationship, okay? As part of designing the relationship, if you take a look at this next slide here, this is a model from the Gallup organization, and it shows us what the 4 needs of followers are. And the reason why I'm doing this air quotes thing is that because we would consider anyone or any employee of an organization a follower. That's how you want to think about this model. And the deal is that we all have needs that we would like to have met within our personal, but also our professional lives. And this is about our professional lives mostly, right? So we all want to have a sense of trust, that we can trust our coworkers and our employees and our management and bosses. We all want to have a sense of stability, that things are going to be okay, which a lot of this is getting shaken up, the stability sense, in an enormous way, given what's going on in the world right now. We all want to have a sense of empathy and compassion, that people, at least to a certain extent, care about us as a person in our workplace. And we all want to have a sense of hope that Again, things are going to be okay, but hey, this is what our organization is doing to navigate this difficult time and help us through this. The reason why I bring all of these up today, everyone, is because conflict and difficulties, when someone is having a hard time, and sometimes if we're having conflict with someone, it can be because there's a breakdown in one of these needs, that you or that other person is not getting one of these needs met. So this can help you identify what may be going on with the difficult coworker or employee so that you can get to the heart of matter and check in with them and ask them, are they okay? Do they need something? Do they need to have a little bit more of a sense of direction about what we're doing and if things are going to be okay, whatever it is? And if you don't ask them directly, you may be able to kind of intuit what may be going on for them. It helps us, if nothing else, have greater empathy for what we're all going through and understanding what may be going on within this relationship that you have with this other person who is being difficult. So use this as a tool to help you, okay? So in closing with our first skill here, and then we'll move to the next one, is designing the relationship just is such a critical thing, even when we're not working remotely anymore, everyone, which as a lot of you, I'm sure, hope is sooner than later. The reason why talking this through openly and asking them what they would like to do to make adjustments and changes is because it empowers each of you to take responsibility for the result. It doesn't just throw the responsibility or blame on either of you. It assumes that you guys can work this out and empowers each person. It establishes clearer boundaries so that each person feels a little bit more safer, so to speak, within the relationship, so that there's a safe space to kind of play in, if you will. And by the way, we would recommend that you periodically update your working relationship agreement with them. Update it as needs and situations change, whether it's every quarter, when you get back to the workplace, et cetera, et cetera. Skill number 2 is going to be active listening. So let's talk about this one, because I know you guys have heard about this before, and most people are like, yeah, I know about that. We're going to give you a paradigm that may be a little bit different from what you've heard before. So active listening in our book, obviously communication and two-way communication is critically important. In the workplace, everything involves communication. And although, as I said, a lot of people feel like, gosh, I listen really well, take a look at the kind of 3 levels of listening, the way we define it for our clients, to double check how good you actually are, okay? So take note of these on your piece of paper here where you're taking notes. Level 1 listening is internal listening. It's listening to our inner voice. I'm hungry. That sounds hard. This is frustrating. I'm sick of being on this Zoom meeting, whatever it is. Okay. And also it includes thinking about what you want to say next. If you're doing that at any given time, you're not actively really listening to the other person. So tone that down. We need to have internal listening. It's part of our needs. But what we want to do is we want to be in level 2 and 3 listening. Level 3, I'll show you in a moment. Focus listening is focused on the other person. It's listening to each word, but also their nonverbal communication and their nuances. And I'll tell you all that even if you're not on a video call with someone, you can still hear what they're not saying to you and get attuned to it. And the way that you do that is by using this global listening, level 3, okay? So let me pull all of these up so we've got everything on the slide. So level 3 listening is what we call global listening. And basically, it's the energy between the two of you. It's the energy that they have going on, how things are shifting or changing. It's the mood or the tone of the conversation. And we really need you to be in level 3 listening as well. Check in, do a gut check during the course of your conversation. How are things going? Are they seeming to get more defensive or not, or something else? And call it out. Don't just step over it. Take a step back and say, hey, it sounds like maybe something else might be going on. Do you mind if we talk about it for a moment? Okay. So if you look at the bottom of this slide here, really critical advice here is if you have to go into a conversation with someone and you're ready, let's say I want to talk about this agreement and I need to talk about stuff that's kind of touchy because, they're being difficult and we need to figure out what's going on. What we would recommend is set the tone of the conversation before just launching right into it. Let them know you need to talk about something touchy. Ask permission. You can say to them, hey, Francis or whatever, I really thank you for this time today. I really appreciate it. And I've got a couple of agenda items I wanted to cover, but there was also something that I wanted to ask you or share with you. And it may be a little bit difficult to hear, but I really feel like it's important to improve our work relationship. Is this an okay time for me to share it right now? Asking them permission, okay? This will drop their defenses down lower than they would be otherwise, and it gives them a heads up about what's coming so that you don't just bulldoze right over them and blindside them. The other way to really get into this third level of listening is to slow down when you're talking. Still your body, be quiet, don't step over anything in the conversation, and ask people a question instead of going right to giving advice. It's human nature. We want to typically help people and fix the problem. So we tend to err on the side of giving advice more so than asking questions. And it's so important instead to rein that in a little bit with difficult situations, because if we ask a question instead of just jumping right in with advice, that will give us that opportunity to really listen and seek to understand first before diving in. One of the active listening exercises we would highly recommend is on this next slide here. Practice this with a coworker that you know really well, or a close friend or family member, even if it's remotely, that's fine, and have them tell you about a problem that they're struggling with these days. And during the course of that conversation, whether it's just for the first 5 or 10 minutes or whatever it is, you are only allowed to reflect back what they say to you and paraphrase it as well. No asking questions even, and no giving advice. And this may sound like easy peasy to you, but I got to tell you, when we do these live workshops in person and we do a pair exercise and we have people do this exercise, it is so hard, they realize, for them to hold this back and hold back their advice or questions. So the way that you build this muscle, if you will, is by practicing it. And we encourage you to take that on as one of your action items in the next week. Let's talk about our third critical coaching skill, and this is curiosity. So this is a really big one for us as coaches. And I'm going to bring everything up here so you guys can read for a minute while I'm talking. We want people, in order to deal with a difficult coworker or employee, and by the way, when you're having this kind of touchy, possibly tough conversation with them, we would highly recommend doing it over video chat as a first preference, phone as a second preference. We don't recommend having these conversations over email, obviously, because things will just get blown out of proportion and you can't hear the nuances and tone in their voice. But with the curiosity piece, you can use this in any way, shape, or form, any form of communication. And being curious with someone versus going to anger or frustration right away, which I know we all feel to a certain extent, or judging them and going to that right away, can really help diffuse a difficult situation and tone everything down, including you. Ask permission before sharing something tough, like we said, or ask permission before sharing anything, or, can we talk about this right now? But one of the things we wanted to describe to you today was this concept of powerful questions. Powerful questions are open-ended questions. They are kind of childlike. There's no judgment in them. And basically, they can allow the other person to vent, explain, identify a solution, or even get something off their chest. And the rule of thumb with powerful questions is they are not yes or no. They are open-ended and big and allow for lots of different ideas and answers to come up, okay? And you can use these in an email. You can use these when you're talking to someone over the phone. And definitely when you're working remotely with people, we encourage you to practice this using these questions even more, because this invites that conversation that we need to have that can provide greater context for people that, like I said, is kind of missing when we're working remotely. Here are some examples at the bottom of the slide here. A couple of powerful questions could be, how can we improve our work relationship? What's the best way to accomplish this goal in your mind? And you can say either with or without conflict. How do we need to change things up with this working remotely thing? How are you doing working remotely? Are there pieces of it that you're finding are harder for you or easier? And is there anything I can do to help? The other thing that you will notice with powerful questions, everyone, is that it assumes a positive outcome. It doesn't allow for, no, this can't work, it's not going to happen. The way that you ask the question is so critically important because when you assume a positive outcome, it assumes or it sets the right tone for the conversation. Okay. And when you let them kind of share or talk first or ask questions first and kind of get out whatever they need to, share their opinion or thought process, you're establishing that trust too with them and letting them know that not only are you willing to listen, but you're really interested in listening to what they have to say, and take a few moments to actually listen. Don't jump in and interrupt. So in terms of powerful questions, everyone, there are two types of them on this slide here. Number one is information gathering. How much time do you need to spend on this? Hey, do we need to give you a little bit more buffer time because with this working remotely, we know priorities have shifted? Is there anyone that could help us with this, and who might that be? There's curious questions. That's the second type. And it's similar to what we said in the previous slide. What will finishing this report feel like for you or provide to you? And what would working together more effectively remotely look like? Is there anything that we need to change up or shift? And here's the deal with the powerful questions too, is that some of us, the person that you're talking with, may not have even thought of these things before. And so what you're doing is not only are you inviting that open-ended conversation with them, but you're also letting them know you're willing to listen, like we said, and you value their opinion, but you're also getting them to think about some things to be more effective on their end that they may not have even thought about yet. So you're being a coach or coach-like even in that moment and getting them to think about some important things that will hopefully improve the work relationship. That's the idea. Okay. We know that we've got a short time today and we're giving you a lot of information, and it's broad strokes. We understand that, your unique situation may be different than some of the things that we're talking about, or might require some very specific, tangible advice for specifically what's going on for you, which is why we always like to, as part of these webinars, we're happy to offer you all a complimentary career strategy session with one of our coaches on our team to help you with any kind of nuances that you may need assistance with as part of participating in this webinar today. So please feel free to take advantage of that. If you would like to, just email us at admin@halliecrawford.com and we will share the scheduling link to get set up with one of our career coaches to get some additional advice there, okay? And as I said at the beginning, before we start to wrap up for today, as I said at the beginning, some of the additional critical coaching skills that we like to actually teach our clients is to leverage their intuition more, as well as self-management. And we'll talk about the self-management here on the next slide in just a moment. So we find that with our clients, understandably, when we're in a professional situation, we tend to use our head mostly and not listen to our heart or our gut as much. I know this can vary from person to person, obviously. And that makes sense. We're in a professional setting, not a personal setting. We get that. But we would encourage you all as well, especially with this difficult person that you're dealing with, to go with your gut a little bit. What do you think might be going on with them that you could help them with, or, try to empathize with what's going on for them, even outside of work? Because as we all know, like for me, we are dealing with homeschooling our 12-year-old son who is ADD. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much else going on in our personal lives, especially now, than is normally happening. So use your intuition to empathize with the other person as well, but also to identify solutions to what may be going on the other side with this other person. Instead of overanalyzing something and just using your head and all of that, let all of this sit overnight before you address the situation with them, because you may get a new idea after sleeping on it. Sit quietly with the issue before just, barging right into the conversation. Journal about what your thoughts are and what some possible solutions are. Talk to a mentor or a coach like us about this situation and what you can do about it. We do one-time, quick 30-minute coaching sessions with brand new clients all the time because they feel like they just need a quick fix. Feel free to do that with us. We're happy to do that. But the bottom line is we want you to approach the situation calmly, because obviously you being calmer will help the whole thing go much better. As part of this is the self-management piece that we want you to practice as well. Try not to jump right to judgment. Try to empathize with them, as we said earlier, and ask questions instead of judging or barging right in with your advice or thought process. And then finally here, the effective assertive communication kind of formula or strategy is the last thing on this slide here for today. We want you to be assertive and get your needs met as well and be direct with people, but we also want you to be understanding. And the basic formula for this is 3 steps here, okay? It's to show understanding first, state the facts of the situation, don't go into the emotions of it, but state the facts and how this is impacting you or them or your work effectiveness practically, from a logical, tangible perspective, and then offer a resolution. So while we do encourage you to ask them, like we said, do you have any thoughts on how we can resolve this or improve things? Ask them first. Don't just leave it all up to them. Have and offer up a resolution as well so that you're prepared to compromise, but also offer up some suggestions too. Okay? So the self-management and the intuition, also critically important as well. So before we close out for today, we want you all to take, even if they're small baby steps towards this, we want you to identify 2 action items that you will take in the next week to improve your communication remotely, working with these difficult people remotely. It could be the complementary career strategy session, like we said. admin@halliecrawford.com. Feel free to email us there to set it up or reply to one of the emails that we've sent you before. It could be that you want to practice the active listening exercise, like we said. It could be that, no, I really need to get at least a few pieces of this agreement set in stone with this person. By the way, you don't have to hammer out the whole new relationship agreement with them in one phone call. It may be better if there's a lot of conflict going on or issues to go kind of step by step and do it over time, just by the way. That's okay. We would rather you get the ball rolling and take baby steps than no steps at all. So write down 2 action items that you will take in the next week. And as our final thought here, I wanted to share with you all that, I know some of these action items may feel like a risk and like, oh, I don't want to do this. This is pushing me out of my comfort zone, whatever it is. This is the quote that I love. This is my favorite quote that I have on my office wall that always reminds me that without risk, there's no reward. I always want to say to my son and to my grandkids that I took the risks that I needed to in order to improve this work relationship, in order to improve or work towards my career goals versus stayed in my comfort zone. So keep in mind, everyone, and remember this as you're thinking about your action items over the next several weeks, that the greatest risk in life, it's actually not taking one in the first place. Okay? So thank you again for your time today, everyone. We are going to close for today. As a quick reminder, that you will get the recording automatically, and we will send you a copy of the ideal career model as part of that email as well. If you would like to schedule a complimentary consultation to learn more about our coaching services, as I said, we do quick one-off 30-minute sessions all the time. If you feel like you need just that quick fix, we'd be happy to chat with you about your situation first, complimentary for just a couple minutes, to make sure that we can help you, make sure it's the right fit, and outline a plan of action for you to get your situation resolved. You can do that by emailing us at admin@halliecrawford.com or going on our website and visiting the Contact Us button to set that up. Thank you so much for your time today, everyone. We wish you safety and health in the coming months, and good luck with everything that you need to do to take care of your professional lives as well as your family, friends, and everything personally. Have a great day.